It is still about engaging the private sector when it comes to how the economy is faring. We've crossed more than 6 months for the first half of this year. But how are the private sector feeling when it comes to the economy? The issues about taxes, the issues about inflation, the issues about climate change and how it impacts the private sector. Can we say that it has been indeed good for them, looking at how the economy has fared for the first half of this year? And that is where we're getting the thoughts of somebody who has played in this space and somebody who represents or could be described as the face of the private sector as we talk about the economy and the private sector and how things are faring for them. What about issues about taxes? Are they okay with it? What about the climate change issues? What about everything that they need to aid their growth? The cost of credit issues? All these things wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition as I engage the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation, Galamsey Bonsu, on PM Express Business Edition to talk about everything that matters to those private businesses out there on PM Express Business Edition. Right back after this break. So indeed, can we say it is a good time to operate as a businessman in the country? I look at inflation, I look at the cost of credit. Every indicator that you would want to point seems to be trending down or even stabilizing. But how is it impacting the private sector in this country? Are things all that rosy or they are quite challenging? Let's bring up some data for you to see us what is happening right now in terms of the numbers. Now let's look at the GDP numbers and what the GDP is saying. 2024, the first quarter, you're looking at 4.9%. 2025, first quarter, 5.3%. Now that is the picture the Ghana Statistical Service is telling us about how the economy has fared now. What are the drivers of this growth? But again, the critical question here is that how is the private sector feeling all these things that are happening when it comes to the larger economy as well? Now let's look at inflation as well in terms of the year-on-year inflation. See where we were and look at where we have gotten. In very, very interesting numbers, some would say, coming down to 13.7%. Again, has it impacted on the cost of production, the cost of credit, and even everything about taxation? We've seen the city perform some miracle. I'll be asking Galamsey Bonsu, he's had these issues with the Ghana city in the past, and that is a snapshot also for inflation as well. The picture is there. The exchange rate from 14.7, 15.3, now we're looking at 10.4. These are the interbank rate. Again, another snapshot of the exchange rate. And again, we'll be getting the thought of Galamsey Bonsu as well in the studio here. Let's look at the policy rate. I know that will be a very interesting discussion for Nana to comment on in terms of where we were, where we have been, and where we are right now when it comes to the policy rate and the cost of credit. And how are all these things, again, impacting on taxes in this country as well? There's also a growing development where some have spoken about the fact that, indeed, the environment that we operate in and how it's impacting on businesses in the country. Galamsey Bonsu is the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation. And I appreciate your time so much, and thank you for having time to pull you in studio here, wherever you had to be tonight, but joining us here. I indeed appreciate your time. I mean, am I right to say Private Enterprise Federation, the umbrella body for all the private institutions in this country here, the organizations, the chambers, and all the rest? Am I fair to say that it is quite a good time to be a business person if all these indicators are anything to go by, Nana?
George, I don't know what you mean by good time.
A stable environment, some would say.
Stable environment. Because inflation had gone down, yes, that's laudable. But the cost of credit, has that been represented by the policy rate charged by Bank of Ghana?
No.
The So the bank's rates are based on the policy rate with their own margins tapped into it. So the cost of credit to private sector had not come down. And that means the cost of doing business had not declined the way we would prefer. Yeah.
Are you using the policy rate as the only indicator? Because I see the CD, you move from 14 or 15 or even 16 to 10.
Not everybody is impacted by the CD.
Now tell me if your members and you, the federation, are not being impacted.
Okay. You see, it affects different groups differently. If you exporting and your income is coming in from overseas and the reduction in the rate, how does it affect you? You're getting less CDs because the dollar exchange rate is. If you paying something out, then you bless your stars that the rate of exchange had come down. So it impacts different groups differently, and depends on how it is. And much more, you made a statement that the city is performing, what was it?
Appreciating.
Yeah. It's actually, as laudable as we prefer to say, the exchange rate has been impacted basically because of the American dollar, which is declining with all international currencies. If you look at the international market indices, you see that the dollar has declined over the euros and the pound and all. It's affecting all currencies. So it's not only the city, because we haven't done much that we may be saying.
But some would say that the same dollar is being rated against the Naira. The same dollar has been rated against the CF. The same dollar has been rated against the Egyptian pound. But if you look at the Bloomberg platform, it ranks the Ghana cedi as the best performing currency compared to the dollar. It means that this country, the company called Ghana, might be doing something right to let the cedi still perform better, because if you rate the dollar against other currencies, they are struggling, even though the dollar on the international market is not doing that well.
Good. Okay. If we attribute comparisons with the different African countries, that's different. If we are challenging the rate between us and the other international currencies, then there's a different perspective that we got to look at. Yeah. So look, whatever it is, we take as is, as today, we take the way it is. If it continues to come down, and I said some period back that gyrating like spaghetti in the wind.
Or yo-yoing.
This time it's not gyrating like spaghetti in the wind. It's good that the exchange rate is coming down a lot more than previously.
But and that's what I just wanted to establish from you, that do I get from you that because the policy rate is not coming down, the real impact of this stability that we are seeing, most businesses are not feeling that impact?
Yes, because the policy rate drives the rates of interest charged by the respective banks. And the policy rate is the basis on which they build their differentials on. So if the policy rate is still up there, and today is what, 28 from 29, beginning of 2024, March is 28, it went to 27. And so obviously, Bank of Ghana should tell us something. Why are they maintaining a policy rate at this level?
It should go down.
It should go down.
But the Bank of Ghana has argued that there are still some uncertainties if you look at the international market there. And therefore, it is fair to still monitor the market a little bit before, even though inflation has come down, they should still monitor the trend before they act. And that is why it's at 28%, and even inflation is even down to 13.7. The gap.
Inflation was 23.5. We were at 27 policy rate, and it's now 13.7, almost 50% off. And we still have 28, just 100 basis points below. That is way too much. So we would appreciate if Bank of Ghana would share why they're still maintaining the 28 policy rate at this time.
Now, how critical is the cost of credit to the operations in the private sector that you think that it is the main factor here
if you want
to bring relief to businesses?
It's the bread and butter. Credit is the cost of doing business. And if credit is high, then the private sector cost of doing business is very high. We don't manufacture our own money. We don't create our own money. And capital adequacy or capital availability is on the basis of the cost of credit. So obviously the cost of credit is a barometer that we base our business proposals and business expectations on. Yes.
You don't agree with the argument the Bank of Ghana is making that they still need time to respond, even though all these indicators are indeed trending down. Some more time is needed to still ensure that they don't end up rather hurting the economy at the expense of freeing credit to private businesses?
I don't have all the data that Dr. Asiam and his team have, especially with their situation with the IMF and all the other things. So if they say that they're watching it, but then I also want them to explain to us how come the other indices are declining and they're maintaining what they're maintaining. So we need some responses from them to make us comfortable because we are businesses. And that is our bread and butter. And as I said, the policy rate determines what the individual banks charge their respective clients.
You think that at their next policy meeting, they have no excuse than to drop the rate?
I wish, George, that I can say they have no excuse.
No, I'm just asking because
as I said,
I'm saying that
I don't know what the other parameters they're looking at. But whatever it is, they must have an avenue to make sure that we get the benefit of the declining policy rate, because obviously it's not what we want at this present time.
Is it the problem about cost of credit or access to credit that is still a major challenge for businesses?
Both. Cost of credit is high. Access to adequate capital formation is very low. Very, very important. In our environment, capital formation is difficult. How do we get it? Our pension schemes, they provide long-term capital for everybody. But do we have enough? And that's one of the areas that we're making proposals when in a meeting with the management team of the government to talk about how do we increase capital formation. The policy of retirement rate, because retirement benefits accrue certain quantum of resources to private sector. Ghana, what we have now, we now have a 3-tier pension scheme, but we're not accumulating enough capital. And so the private sector avenue, the Federation was part of the consortium that developed and sought the 3-tier pension scheme, which Mr. Bediako and his team turned into private sector having about 35%, 36%, non-pensions to them. What we need to have is that government participate in the pension scheme, especially the 3rd tier, the SNIT 1st tier, the 2nd tier from the private sector or from the staff, the employees, is fait accompli. The 3rd tier, which is your choice, whether to do or not to do, we want full participation, additional people participating to increase the quantum of resources that go into that. Because when you do review the NPRA, the regulation we were looking at, that 3rd tier portion, that quantum, should be invested in private sector endeavors. Private sector endeavors. In all the pension schemes and the advisory experts, most of them are investing in treasury bills and treasury bonds. That is not private sector. That's not the reason why the 3rd tier was advocated for. So the capital adequacy is critical to allow us, if the volume of capital available to private sector is such that they will be begging for investment opportunities, it definitely will make the rates go down. Yes.
And I know that in the past, a lot of businesses complained about the high rate of the Ghana cedi or the way it has depreciated. And your argument was that, or private sector's argument was that we want a stable cedi, even if the rate is high. We've seen the cedi being fairly stable. Are we seeing private sector behave like Oliver Twist, that now even the cedi is stabilized is not enough, we want policy rate to also go down? I just want to get the understanding that private sector is not satisfied with how the currency has fared and the fact that it remains fairly stable.
George, you said it succinctly. You put it right the way I would prefer to say it. Yes, it's stable, but is it at the pricing that we want? No.
What do you want to know?
We want something below the 28 policy rate that will influence the cost of borrowing to the private sector by the respective banks. We want the rate to come down. If it does, then we say, hallelujah. The city has stabilized. There's adequate, keyword, adequate financial resources available to private sector to conduct and prosecute our business.
Now, what do you tell those who would argue that, again, part of your members, the Federation, private sector, should be taking the blame for the high cost of credit? Because I look at the NPLs, and they are quite high.
You hit me below the belt.
A lot of them are not
non-performing loan portfolio.
Yeah,
yes.
Are blaming the private sector again for not lending, for not paying back.
I agree with you that a lot of borrowers are not performing the way they're supposed to. But I also blame the banks, because don't give credit to everybody who walks through the door. And if they...
That is quite debatable, Nana.
Oh, no. You have to be able to analyze the capacity to take the loan and service the loan. You have to be able to, as a bank, to analyze it. I used to be a bank examiner some years back. So you should be able to tell that John Q is not going to pay. Look at his previous performance, previous record and all. How can you have an NPLs of 10 plus? Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Any bank which has NPLs in excess, in double digits, I think Bank of Ghana should call them to book and have a discussion with them, because they have to monitor their credit that they extend and monitor the performance, and whoever is not paying be taken into the respective agencies for the redress. Yes.
I mean, Nana, some would say that, if I look at the NPLs, and some would say that I get the argument you made, all right, but for a lot of the financial institutions out there, they want to help the private sector. Yes. And that is why they are open and have a flexible stance when it comes to lending to the private sector.
George, there's a capacity development. If you lend into a business that is not doing well, you have to babysit, you have to hold their hands and make sure that they get the benefit of your skills development, the benefit of a market indices, a market performance. This way, they will be able to make their money and service their loans. But if you give them the quantum amount and then leave them alone, even though they don't have the capacity, the skill set to be able to utilize the funding correctly, I think it's the fault of the institution that extended the credit.
Wouldn't the same private sector come back and argue that it is difficult to access credit from these commercial banks?
Well, that I would support anybody that's denied credit availability on the basis of non-performance, because obviously they're not worthy of the credit extension to them. That definitely is no two ways. It's not the private sector. We are ourselves. We talk among ourselves and we tell our partners, don't do this. You're hurting everybody. The good ones, there may be situations where you have difficulties. That's why the bankruptcy law also come in. That the rescue package that you can get, continue to do business, take advantage of that. But don't fail to perform. That is unacceptable.
What advice, again, would you, I know that the policy rate is just one aspect of it. There are still a lot of things that the Bank of Ghana has to do or must do to improve the environment when it comes to cost of credit. What is the Federation, I don't know whether there's been even any informal engagement with the Bank of Ghana in terms of what they have to do to improve the environment when it comes to the cost and even access to credit?
We've been writing to various institutions or authorities as to the discussion we want to have with this, Minister of Finance, Minister of Trade, and Bank of Ghana authorities to understand. As I said, I don't see what Dr. Sharma sees. I don't share with him. So if there's something else he wants to tell us, to share with us, and also advise how the private sector can utilize those resources and be responsible for the repayment of the advances made to them, then we all share a common goal, because we are in this together. The private sector is the beneficiary. or the corporate if they don't pay. And the Bank of Ghana is the authority to make sure that things are made available to the business environment and the business entities to be able to create the wealth and the growth of the economy.
Are you the sector satisfied with the Bank of Ghana in terms of what they've done so far as an institution, not any individual there, in terms of, again, the credit issues, the monetary space, the FX issues, or you think that if the Federation should have an opportunity to engage the management, the board of BOG, what are some of the concerns that you would lay to them about what they have to do to improve the environment for you?
Well, as I said, we don't see what they see, and we don't tell them what to do, but we want them to understand that it's hurting our businesses when the cost of credit is very steep. So our businesses are not performing compared to the growth that we anticipate if we were given a low-cost funding that will allow us to do business. So that discussion will come when we meet with the hierarchy of the Bank of Ghana and the Minister of Trade, Minister of Finance and Minister of Trade.
Nana, some would want to factor or benchmark the cost of credit to the economic environment. And if the economic environment is really good, that would automatically impact on the cost of credit. There's a school of thought that have raised questions about some of these indicators and whether indeed it's a structural changes that is resulting in that, or there are some within the extreme that will see that it's kind of massage and all the rest. Let's bring in the environment, the economic environment. How do you see the environment now?
I don't even know what you mean by economic environment. Which one is what? The cost of money to us.
The economy.
The economy is based upon performance, based upon adequacy of funding available to private sector to prosecute its business and make money. That will lead to growth. So if there's no growth, and there's no growth because the private sector is not performing adequately enough to make sure that they get the money or the returns that they're looking for.
How would you rate or describe or define a private sector that is performing?
You invest X, and you get X plus 1, X plus 2, X plus 3. That is private sector performing. Because private sector business should always create growth. The private sector business is to invest, take the risk, and realize the gains. And once they're realizing the gains, they bring in some more hands, and that creates an expansion of the economy. That is what business is all about. We don't go businesses we take the risk to create the opportunity. And by creating the opportunity, we will also, because of the risk that we have taken, we want to be rewarded with the gains that come with it.
Now, do I get from you that if everything that is happening in the economy is not impacting on the cost of credit, we cannot pat ourselves on the back from the political space and those who are managing the space that, hey, we've done well, inflation is coming down, cost of credit is, exchange rate is going down, IMF program is doing well, all these things. Do I get from you that the main indicator has not been affected? So let's be careful on how we run around without our shirt or our singlet or even our boxers celebrating in town that, hey, we are back to where we were.
Hallelujah, you said it. Because obviously, if they're dealing with the International Monetary Fund and they're getting the credit and the balances and everything is in order, it should impact in the key barometer of private sector businesses. How do we get resources to do our business? And the resources are what? Money. And if the cost of money had not come down and we borrow at X when the other partners within the community, within the Commonwealth or within the ECOWAS is also borrowing and competing, ECOWAS economy, competing against us in the international arena, and our cost of money is more than twice theirs, we're not doing well. We're not doing well. So we don't look at how much is the IMF giving Ghana. No. There are avenues that we can create adequate resources and financial muscle to enable private sector tap into it and make money. And that is what I mentioned, one of them, pension schemes. They're there. How are we accumulating the pension schemes? Ask NPRA. How are we investing the third-tier pension scheme that's supposed to go to private sector, a destination of investments? So these are tools that we have, and we have to utilize them.
I talked about the IMF. We've got a fourth review. We've passed a fourth review. We had fourth tranche coming in. Doesn't all these things excite you because of the impact on the confidence of the economy by businesses outside, investors
the
outside?
IMF has signed on, and the impact, the confidence is laudable. Does it flow, the 300 million, flow down to private sector businesses to tap into it? I don't know. I haven't seen that. If we get that, then hallelujah. Everybody is singing to the church, going to the choir. But where is the 300 million?
It just came in yesterday.
It just came in yesterday.
Yeah.
So 24 hours, where is it?
But government says they'll use it for budget-supported programs.
Thank you. Now it's going to government. It's not coming to private sector.
The projects that they will finance with impact on the private sector.
Let the private sector take the money and invest, not the government invest and get an impact on the private sector, not the reverse, no. We would prefer that if that money is made available to private sector, take that and invest and create a quantum of jobs and the wealth, not government to invest it. But that's the way it is. Government takes it and government invests it. And then it's supposed to trickle down to private sector benefit.
Yeah, because in economics, in GDP, there is the expenditure approach. And that expenditure approach by government spending could stimulate growth, could aid in private sector growth.
George, we left the School of Economics some years back, but the key point is that the resources should be made available to the private sector to make sure that, you see, people invest and they take their risk. And if it's going to be dancing around the government invest and the trickle-down effect is going to accrue to the private sector, that's not how businesses operate. Let the quantum be available to them. Let them take the risk. Let them invest. And also, the key point that you made is payback. Definitely, we insist that every borrower should pay back. If not, that's why we advocated for the bankruptcy law to give them a rescue package that will allow them to redress and recoup and come back and do business.
Has the private sector shown leadership? Because you talked about give the money to us and let's do business.
Oh, definitely.
Has the private sector shown leadership that we can then trust in giving you? In some economies, it's the private sector that leads.
Yes. I think
Have we shown that leadership role in Ghana here? Some would say that no.
If the private sector had been given the opportunity, yes, because what you're saying is, let's say PEF, have we shown any leadership so far as the private sector? Yes, indeed, we have. I'll stand on my 2 feet and jump. Yes, we have. So all these avenues that allows us, as I said, even when we go through bankruptcy, now people have understood the bankruptcy situation and processes that once you file a bankruptcy, it's not the end of the game. You have a redress to regroup and get capacity development to come back and start businesses again. And private sector had not even taken advantage of the bankruptcy the way I thought they should. So private sector had definitely shown leadership. Yeah, there are bad apples among us that are not paying. But as I said, if they come in to borrow and you don't put the guidelines and you don't monitor what they do with the money and you release the funding 24/7, anytime they cough, you give it to them and you don't seek the returns, obviously. I don't blame the private sector. I blame the people that gave them the money because obviously they shouldn't have advanced that resources to them.
How would you describe or PEF the first 6 months of this year in terms of the economy again, how things have worked out? There has been the implementation of government policies and all the rest. The first 6 months of the year, for you at PEF, how would you describe how things have been?
George, I'm looking at the indices, and that is the margins that we're talking about. So we haven't done the critical analysis as to the impact to the individual sectors, agriculture, insurance, and others. We haven't done that. We're only looking at the indices. So far as the indices are concerned, they're coming down. But the key barometer is the cost of money on the basis of the policy rate had not come down.
Then I asked this question because there are some who say, even when in the past where inflation was going down, they will say that inflation is my pocket and my purchasing power. And that's why I'm saying that even if you move away from the numbers, how is the private sector describing how things have been for them for the past 6 months of this year? Yes, we can play in the number space, but just like the scenario about inflation is my pocket, inflation is my purchasing power. If businesses today are struggling to meet salaries, businesses today are struggling to expand, if businesses today are still having issues with the cost of power, would you describe the first 6 months of this year as good, bad, or ugly?
You brought in a determinant, power.
Yes.
The doomsaw is a killer to private sector businesses. They can't continue to do business 24/7.
Is this still happening? We've got to understand that doomsaw is over. There's nothing like doomsaw.
George, where have you been?
No, I'm just asking. What are your members telling? Because we got the understanding that
we get complaints. We get complaints.
the people are still having doomsaw
yes,
as we speak right now.
Yes. Doomsaw in various neighborhoods, in various communities that they're not getting the benefit to conduct their business. Whilst they're not getting the benefit, they're paying salaries. The cost continues to accrue, even though they're not performing the way they would prefer to. So there are other variables other than the cost of money.
Yeah, and that's what I was coming to then.
Yes,
and
other variables that affect operations of private sector businesses. Staff costs, cost of doing business, other things, taxes. Let's say Ghana, 100% economy, 90% or 92% is private sector. The private sector pays A to Z. And if that definitely impacts on the economy, it's obviously because they're not doing well. And we would want the government to support, as we just mentioned, the IMF bailout funding had come in. Let's see how it trickles down to private sector banks or to the institutions, how they utilize and portion that to their clients. So those are the things.
And do I get from you that the real economics is that all these indices are yet to impact on the private sector, and therefore they are still not doing well because the expectation was that the real economy or the real impact of all these things is yet to impact on the operations? If I still get from you that doomsaw is still a killer, I'll come to the taxes issues and I also come to the environment issues as well. But just before we come to the taxes issues, then I get from you that it is still a challenge for the private sector in Ghana today, despite all these variables kind of stabilizing.
All these, or some of these variables.
Let's say some of these variables.
Okay. Some of the variables are coming down. It's laudable, and we prefer that to continue to come down. But the others are also not coming down and affecting the conduct of business. And that is what we're talking about, and it should be.
PEF is a strong organization. PEF is a big organization. And it might be early days yet for this new government, because I knew in the past PEF pushed a lot with the Private Sector Council and everything, Advisory Council and all the rest. What has been the engagement between PEF as a body and government? And I'll come to the bit about the president and the economic management team and all the rest. Has there been any formal engagement where we are pushing and pressing the dots and telling the finance minister that, listen, what has delayed? 6 months, it means a lot for business in this country.
George, running a government is not like going to the bathroom. It takes some, there are new players in town who have not been in positions before. So you have to allow them room to grow, to understand, to appreciate their responsibilities. It's not that we're shying away. No, we've been writing to their respective Minister of Finance, Minister of Trade and Agribusiness and all, and the presidency. It's not like we want to rush to go and meet and just have photo sessions. We want to meet and talk substantive business. And for them to appreciate and understand the substantive business and their responsibility, we have to give them room to grow into that. That's what we're waiting.
6 months is a lot. It means a lot for any...
Running a government is 4 years.
Any business in this country, I don't think the private sector want to wait for 4 years before they engage those who matter in this space.
George, we have done some, I wouldn't say formal, but we will get the formal, and definitely, as I said, we're not rushing to judgment. So we can't say, oh, yes or no, there's not going to be what or what.
Not about judgment, but I'm saying that has there been any engagement with government? And what are they telling you that, listen, we would, and I'll come to the taxes issue because I don't want to just mix it up. And they are giving you some indications that, okay, the bit about infrastructure, the bit about the doomsday, which is still a problem, we are working on it. The bit about pension funds, we are doing X, Y, Z. For you to see that when you see a kid trying to play with a Ferrari, you could say that he wants to get on the F1 platform and be riding. Are you seeing those indications, indicators from this government that gives you some comfort going forward?
George, as I said beginning, we have written to requesting a meeting. We have not yet met with the formal government team to analyze or to bring our concerns and to also learn the programs that they anticipate to put in place that will help private sector to succeed. So we haven't done.
When are you hoping to do that?
Well, it takes two to agree. We have written, we haven't gotten the responses yet or agreed to the date yet. I think yesterday or 2 days ago, we had a little breathe up where we met with the president and the launch of the SDGs, which we think is also on the back of the private sector to be able to do, to enable government to make the climate impact and all the things that need to be done. So, as I said, we are allowing room for them to grow, but we also are waiting and anticipating to get a meeting that will have substantive discussions. Substantive, it's not photo sessions. We don't go for that. Yes.
With this meeting, has there, and not to divulge anything that was said in there, are they giving you any indications that gives you some comfort?
We haven't gotten responses yet. We've written, but we haven't gotten the responses yet.
In the past, there were economic management teams, there were private sector councils and all the rest. Would you push for a similar engagement, a similar platforms where regularly private sector can have access to the president, private sector can have access to the finance minister, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, the forum of financial regulators and all the rest, that will ensure that your concerns are well heard of? Because some will say that if you fix the problems of the private sector, maybe half of the challenge in this economy is solved.
George, what we call JM1, that's the presidency's first term. We had all these parameters, all these avenues available to us, and we intend to rescue and initiate that kind of relationship going forward. We haven't yet, and I don't say that we're not going to, because we're pushing, and definitely takes two to tango, and we expect that we'll come to dance together in the nearest future.
Do you see this dance happen very soon?
I hope and pray, because we need to. I hope and pray that we get this engagement as quickly as possible. Yes.
How critical would that be for the private sector going forward in terms of having this platform?
Oh, the platform allows a dialogue. The dialogue is to bring our challenges, the difficulties, the doomsday, and all the things that we've been talking about here to the attention of the ministry, to the attention of the powers that be or the bureaucrats who run the business. The other day we were talking about the cost of doing business and the taxes. And I remember when the Honorable Atto was just an MP in, now he's in the seat. And we had talked at length over a period of time on the tax. One size fits all, the SME and big players all paying at the same rate. And he was enthusiastic about it. But so far, we haven't heard from him yet, even though we have made inroads and attempts to meet with him and written to him and all that. So these are, as I said, they come in assuming a mantle. We want them to grow into that. And then when we meet, we have a thorough discussion and have a position that will enrich that discussion and enrich the private sector.
Nana, growing up and I stand to be educated, and I think it's a fact still. I saw the Private Enterprise Federation as the body that any government where the such should engage. But when I get from you that we've written to them, we get to respond, I struggle a little bit because whether the Private Sector Federation doesn't appreciate the muzzle that it has to push for things to happen.
George, we appreciate who we are, and we appreciate who they are.
And you appreciate that you are a big institution.
I'm not going to say we are big or small.
You are big, it's a fact.
We are an organization that plays to get the effectiveness in place. And the point is that we don't want to go and talk to people just for photo sessions and all. And that's why we said we've written, because if you want to meet with me, like now we're here, we agreed when I was out of town, and then you called and said, yes, Nana, can we talk? I said, yes, we agreed. But before I left, we hadn't talked. So now that we look into, we had written, there must be a process and procedures to get that done. And we hope that they will also respond accordingly so we can meet, because it works for both of us, for both sides of the aisle, the government and the private sector, to be engaged and to move the process forward, because the growth of the economy is critical, that all the players have to be in playing together to make it happen.
The president, when he launched the 24-hour economy, said that he wants the private sector to take the lead. It's equipped, it's supported. 24-hour economy. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, government is pressing ahead of this, and they say that you have to take the lead in this program.
Well, it's not our program, it's the program of the government.
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten the gist and thrust of the 24-hour economy yet. There are other ways that we would want to be explained, the commitments of the government. Let me step back, George. Previous governments, we had what? PSI.
1D, 1F.
We had 1D, 1F. Now, all of a sudden, the PSI, Presidential Special Initiative, came and gone. The 1D, 1F, just 2 or few days ago, the government had dropped the shoe that the policy has been cancelled. Now, if private sector had invested in that and taken the risk, and the shoe is dropped, what did they do? So now they talk about 24-hour economy. Please give us the gist, the trust, and the kind of confidence that the private sector may want to invest in it. Because every time private sector invests, there's a risk that they're taking. And that risk, we don't want the shoe to drop down the road and another government can say, hey, guys, sorry about that, we're canceling this kind of project. So we're looking at the incentives. What kind of incentives are they putting together on the 24-hour economy? The scale of support, the scale of security. Security in the sense that somebody closes from work, 24 hours, they're going home 2 o'clock. Do they have transportation? So all those infrastructure that should be in place. They have listed a whole range, and I think I have some here, a whole range of things that can be. But let's not start running. Let's walk and find out that these things are in place, because the private sector is not going to invest unless they see these things in place, unless their clients, the security is provided, transportation to go home from work and all that. So, yes, the template had been displayed. Do we now get the commitment? How long before they suffer the fate of 1D, 1F or PSI? So we also want to make sure, because the private sector money is private sector money, and it came through hard-earned avenues. And, if the risk is not worth it, then the private sector's investment is not going to come as much as, So the government says they want private sector to lead. We will want to lead. No two ways about that. But please make us comfortable that you put in the structures, in the infrastructure in place, the logistics in place, the processes in place, the protection and security in place, and the capital formation is also in place, available. Then the private sector would jump up and say, hallelujah, we are partners to dance. And
I get from you that without all these things being put in place, the private sector is not ready for this thing.
Private sector is always ready to do, but the private sector does not risk its money unless they're comfortable that the risk is fair and that they're not going to be burnt to ashes when they do. So we are ready to do business, but then the avenue and the environment to do business had to be comfortable for private sector to invest in.
Do you have wished that the PEF, the private sector, would have had a more input in this policy? Because it appears that it is going to be the major policy game changer for this government. That's why they threw the charge at you that they want you to lead.
Well, you see, policy advocacy is one of our biggest mantra. And so if the government comes to the plate and said, this is our policy direction, now we're going to go and examine and pinpoint gaps that we see in the policy that they have established for them to understand that, yes, you want this to be driven by private sector, but these are the gaps. We want these things in place, the infrastructure, the avenues for security, the protection and all that, and the capital formation. So we now going to go, now that it's been established, it's now a policy to make it viable and implementable. Let's look at the parameters that will make it the private sector, You telling somebody, you're going to head this avenue, you're going to do it for us, you're going to now be the partner that drives it. Okay, if you want me to be a driver, I have to be tall, I have to sit on a cushion, I have to have this pedal, I have to do this and that. So we're going to go back to government and say, Mr. Government, please, these are the things that are missing that we see. If we put that in place, hallelujah, we can do.
Now, let's look at taxes, and I know it has been a major concern of yours in the sector. Has it improved as we speak right now based on the previous advocacy and push, or no, it has gotten worse?
Income tax is 25% across board. Nobody has anything less. 25% across board for micro, small, and medium enterprises, as much as to the large players. There's no change. We have advocated, we wanted legislation, and as I said, this is one area that the Minister of Finance, when he was on the other side of the coin, he and I engaged in discussions at various points, and we thought that we were coming close to getting a legislation to put that, the variation, because the research that we had done under Usiwa from 2020 to 2018 to 2020 indicates that the quantum of taxes that are not yielding the expectation of the government is basically because of the one size fits all. Because some people, some businesses don't understand their obligations. Some people don't even know how to calculate their responsibility. And oh yes,
where are the accountants in their institutions? Where
not everybody has an accountant.
That hire the cost, the chartered accountants and all the rest. The tax persons to work on these.
You don't go incur costs to pay taxes. You do not go incur costs.
That will say some is debatable, Nana.
No. Make it simple so the businesses. You see, we have MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprise. Not everybody can afford a qualified accountant. And if they're going to go through costs before they pay taxes, they say, catch me when you can, because then that's when they run. And the tax administration cost to government becomes high because you have to catch them. And GRA would tell you that this is why they're going after businesses who don't pay.
Do I get from you the complexities of the current tax structure as forcing some, and I emphasize the word some,
yes,
to rather avoid the payment of this?
Not avoid. It's a responsibility and obligation of every business to pay their fair share of the taxes. But they don't see that. For somebody, 2,000 out of 40,000 is a big chunk of losing than for 2,000 out of 2 million. So the small and micro people get impacted negatively when they pay the same 25% of their income. So that's why we call it, PEF had done a tremendous amount of 2.5 years research, and we call it tiered or staggered tax system. So if you're making 2,000, they say, okay, pay 10%. If you're making 4,000, they say pay 12%. So it's staggered, tiered in the basis of the income you make. Then you pay, but not 25% of everything for everybody.
Then I asked that question because I know, forgive me and my my fellow accountants, my colleague accountants, forgive me. I know there's a bit about the tax evasion, the tax avoidance. One, it's not illegal, and
no.
and I'm just saying that isn't the avoidance because I just forgot. I mean that because of what has happened, a lot of businesses are now looking at ways to avoid that bit. That is that what is happening because of the complexities, and even the well-structured businesses. And I remember we spoke to a tax consultant, Timor Boy, who had even complained that even the well-structured businesses are struggling to appreciate the VAT structures and all the rest. So why would I want to do all these things and when I don't understand the system?
Okay. You have the obligation and responsibility to pay your taxes. Now, before you meet your obligations and meet your responsibilities, there's a cost to it. Now, the business have, challenges meeting the tax obligation itself. Now, the additional cost of engaging in a suitable accountant to explain to you, to do the mathematics and the calculation for you to go pay. That is where we say that it's not fair to the small and micro, medium enterprises. So make it as simple, make it the tier tax system that, okay, you're going to pay this percentage if you do X, you're going to pay that percentage if you do Y, and make it simpler. So at least they can take advantage and do. Because if they don't, you would definitely have to chase them under the tax laws, the obligation. GRA will chase them. The GRA cost of tax administration goes up when you chase the recalcitrant, taxpayers, because you have to catch them. And the guy says, catch me when you can, if you can. And it becomes a chase left and right, which is not what the private sector prefers. What we prefer is meet our obligations in responsible ways and make sure that it's calculated and it's fair. And if there's a refund due us, we get it in accordance to the terms.
How would you describe the GRA's engagement to the sector now? Because I know in the past, businesses have complained about the machoism and then the hell to operate and the little breathing space to work. And some of the members have complained that they are being harassed by GRA, they are yet to put their books in order, they have no space. Has this thing improved as we speak right now, or it is still the same old Joe?
There's a slight improvement, but not much. And the point is that, the taxman believes that he's the omega and maiden.
The alpha and the omega.
Yes. And the point is that if you destroy the business, that because they didn't pay their taxes and we go after them in the night, we close their books, that's the end of GRA itself. Because the tax that they would have paid tomorrow is not going to come because the business collapsed. So you don't collapse business. You encourage them to stay there and pay, even if in drips and drabs and, in different quarters, extending the time for payment over a period of time. Because if you allow them, they will pay. If you work with them, they will pay. And this is what the research indicated. 2.5-year research on the back of why private sector has to pay their taxes or would prefer to pay their taxes, would prefer to meet their obligation in a fair manner.
Now, are some businesses not just trying to be outwit and smart? Because it appears that some of your members always want to reduce their tax exposure. And the argument, for instance, the argument about VAT, VAT is not a VAT on your profit. You've collected the tax on behalf of the state. When it comes to paying back, it is a problem.
Yes. Well, George, if you have a small, micro, medium enterprise of Ghana sitting there, paying taxes, fair share of taxes, even having difficulty meeting that, and you have the conglomerate coming from John Q outside, and they get a tax exemption out of up to everything, what is the comparison? That the homegrown meets the obligation, the foreign coming in has a tax benefit? These are the things that we talked about.
Has people got a problem with the tax exemptions by government?
Oh, yes.
What are the problems? Some are saying that for the investment purposes, let's use that to bring in the chevrons. Let's use that to bring the apples in Ghana here. Let's do that to bring in the Hiltons to Ghana to operate here.
Good.
That is why they're extending the tax.
Do they pay taxes in their home country? Yes,
of course they do.
Okay, so
but now you want to attract that big firm into your country. What are you giving them to come in?
The incentive is now what we said. We met with the Constitutional Review Committee, and we said that the financial value of the tax exemption should be apportioned into 4 different categories. First, reinvest. This is not your net income. This is tax exemption that you would have paid to government. That's government money that you've been forgiven to you. We said, break it into 4. The situation where you invest your business, micro, small, and medium enterprise of Ghanaian ownership, invest in them, 25% of the value. Another 25% to another MSME in different sectors unrelated to the sector of your operations. Another 25% into areas where you can match the funding to the MSME within the country, Ghana. And then the 25%, hallelujah, we want to take you to take back home with you because you have done all this and met the obligation. Because you see, the tax exemption is tax forgiveness, and that's money that should have gone to government to construct the roads, to build the housing, and that is being forgiven. Don't forget. It's not like they come in and, hallelujah, the houses are built, hallelujah, no. So the private sector says that let the MSMEs also benefit. Local MSMEs should also become beneficiaries of that tax exemption that they couldn't, because they don't even make their income much more to be forgiven for the tax.
If the tax exemptions is good, then what is good for the geese is good for the gun. That is what should be happening.
Yeah, today you are really making it fine for me. Yes, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Yes, sir. Yes. For the private sector, for the MSMEs, they also have to qualify. They also have to get the benefit of that.
I get from you that simplify the tax structure and we'll go with you.
Yes. That one, there's no brain about it. You have to make it a simple A, B, C for the private sector. As I said, we are micro, small, and medium enterprises. They all have obligations, and they want to honor the obligation. Even the carriers pay when they go to the market. How come the big conglomerate coming from John Tew outside, they have the tax forgiveness and the tax exemption? That's not fair.
Government says that they are reforming the VAT structure, and then the new ones could be taken off from September this year as well. Does it give you any comfort in terms of the...
Let's engage in the discussion as the new one and the formal, the way it's supposed to be. So at least we know that we were part of what is supposed to be, and then we have no other obligations but to be responsible.
Are you not being engaged on that, on the VAT reforms that they are doing?
No, we haven't.
But some will say it concerns you.
Of course it's a concern.
And in September, the new VAT reform
is going to come into being.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you are not part of any engagement?
George, if you don't invite me to your house, I can't walk in.
And then some will say, but PEF is big that you don't want to sit down for a critical thing like VAT, the new VAT laws that will take off from September, the structure, the collections. Some members tell even the insurance, the non-life. Some are saying that the advertised rate was 15%. In reality, we are paying 21%. You don't want to sit idle for it to be placed on you again to pay
You see,
VAT of 26% or 27%.
No. The point is, if they don't engage us and we want to be included, you can only come to my house if I open the doors for you. And so if they don't include us, then what we say is that it's not fair. You see, one of the things that we haven't done, basically, is that when things are not fair to us, and we argue left and right, and the policy is still in place, there are avenues that we can also go to court, that we are not being treated fairly.
How are you going to do that?
We haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
I said yet.
Okay.
We haven't gotten to that yet. So if the shoe fits at one time, then maybe we will engage and say, GRA, what is going on? Or government, what's going on? Are we being excluded from the benefit of these things because you want to suck it to us? No. But the reality is that it is going to happen, whether you engage or not. It is going to affect you. It's going to affect. Do you want to sit down for it to come to you and affect you? We're not saying that. Or you want to move and ensure that you influence whatever that happens in that, George, the VAT structure, the VAT reform that will take off from September? Okay, what I'm saying is that it's going to come in September. We're not sitting down. We're engaging with our members, avenues, how to address that. We will come to the point, and then we'll also take some action and address it to government that, sir, this is not fair to us, or sir, this is good, we agree, and we are going to play our roles and accordingly as required.
Now let's come to the environment, the literal environment we operate, the trees, the air, and all those things as well, and the environment. How cautious are your members about the environment that you operate in terms of, some will now use the word going green, the climate change and all the rest, because some are saying that whatever that we do in this space, it has great impact on us going forward.
Yes. It's not only what we do here in Ghana, it's a global issue. Yesterday we did the SDGs, and I was part of the team that went to the United Nations when we did the MDGs and all that. Now, the carbon emissions, some countries exude more than us. Ghana has a benefit of the canopy effect of our cocoa industry, of our agriculture, of forestry and all. But we also depleting some of these things. If you go to the north, the cocoa butter, the shea butter trees, they've been cut and made into charcoal. We think that the government should come to the point where charcoal should be banned in our environment forever. Because it costs, even today, to cook. If you use charcoal, it costs you more than somebody who uses cook stove. So let's create the environment where we can give every household free, absolutely free cook stoves. But then when you get a cook stove, you have to buy the gas. And the pricing of charcoal is more than the gas. So if you get the free cook stove and you buy the gas, hallelujah, you're reducing your cost of cooking in your house. And Ghana can then sell the carbon footprint to another country that is polluting. As we speak, the government of Ghana is involved with Click Foundation of Switzerland, that we selling our carbon footprint to them, so at least they can take advantage, because they're polluting, some of their factories are polluting more than we do. Now, the pricing they're giving us is less than what it should be. But so the Private Enterprise Federation is looking to create a partnership with various entities of government to go and sell to respective countries that can pay a higher pricing for their carbon footprint. Yes.
And that brings in more money for us.
That will bring in more money for us. And if that money is coming, this resource availability that we've been talking about should be made available to private sector to conduct their business.
There are some who've described it, and we will still be heavy on the environment, about a clear and present danger. And what do you think the government is doing in this space? Galamsey, it's a big issue.
George,
what are we doing about it?
We've been talking, we've been shouting.
But it is not getting better.
Oh, no.
It is getting worse.
Worse. I agree with you. Let me give you some years back under JM1. I say JM1 under presidency, President John Mahama's first time. We met, Private Enterprise Federation and its members, including the small-scale miners, met with the president that the miners are being attacked in the bushes by Galamsey people, mostly at that time Chinese. And I don't know if today you heard the Chinese that been arrested in the book.
Being shot, one is shot as
yes.
well.
And the president said 4 things. They had agreed with China to arrest the Chinese Galamsey players, try them, imprison them, and then repatriate them home. Along the way, we also said that we needed protection in the forest because these Chinese are armed. Today, you also saw the display of heavy equipment. Yeah. And the president said, no, they cannot assign the armed forces protection to the private sector. So the armed forces will go in and do their job. 3 months after that, they left. They quit. That was the beginning of big-time Galamsey because it used to be small-scale miners. Now, everybody is into it. And here we are again. Just today, we saw this Chinese. If you're traveling from East Africa to Ghana, the plane load from East Africa, 60% of them are of Oriental origins. And where are they going? They come into Ghana. They get off at the airport and they vanish into the bushes without any trace. And that's what has been happening. Today, I was talking to the CEO of the Chamber of Mines. And we were talking about the arrest of some of the people and all. This is one thing, and I know I trust the presidency in his crusade to prosecute anybody. What we at the Federation is anticipating to prescribe to government is death sentence to anybody engaged in Galamsey.
Does that solve the problem now?
No, if you know more, and you know that you're not going to benefit from the accruals of the resource to you, and your asset will be confiscated with you and your related partners, people will stop that. If you're traveling from Takoradi to Accra in a plane, see the kind of the rivers of Pra and Ofin entering the sea. They colorize the sea at that almost about 500 or 50 meters out of that area. That is Galamsey. Why do we prescribe that safe sentence?
The shoot-to-kill approach.
Yes, shoot-to-kill approach is the sense that you polluting, you providing cyanide into our food system, in our waterways, cyanide and, mercury. These are killing elements, and they kill people, and you see people dying, they having diseases, and we should reward you, and we should say that, oh, give him 6 months in prison to do what? Come back and do the same? No. Let's take care of that business, push them away. Our waterways are now polluted. The fish that we get in, you should be careful what we eat.
But now someone was saying that those are the, if I can use the expression, the small, small boys. The Speaker of Parliament recently said that they know those who are doing this. These people channel their funds to the banking system. We see the huge articulated trucks and then the excavators and all the rest. Some are saying that let's go after the financiers of this thing. Freeze the account.
Are there anybody other than the Galamsey players? You think these people...
No, they are big boys behind these people. These are the young boys who are just doing on the ground.
Please.
They are financiers behind these boys.
They are financiers who are rich themselves.
After them.
Okay, if we know them, let's go after them.
Assets.
Freeze their assets.
Sanction the banks or commercial banks that are aiding their outfit to move these funds around.
George, if somebody is saying that, I'm very disappointed. That you know Young Q doing it, and you're going to freeze his assets so he can walk on the streets for nothing?
No, but it's
and
another
he's killing
step
everybody?
Another step of clipping that person, because if that person is not getting access...
So why don't you take him to court? He's doing something illegal. And why don't
sanction
you
those commercial banks who are allowing their outlet to be used to channel these funds?
So you're telling me, you're sitting here and telling me, the banks are aware that, George...
There are reports that there are some of these banks who are aiding these things.
I wouldn't want to believe that.
Okay. But these monies that are being used to buy these trucks, they are not flying from space to down there. The money that they are using to pay these people.
George, I'm disappointed to say that if we do know and we don't take action, we are being negligent in our responsibility. And that is not fair to the citizenry.
No, because you talked about the shoot-to-kill approach, and I said,
yes,
but would that be effective if the other chain is not clipped?
No, but the other chain, we said, we know them. So you
go
link
after them.
You go after
freeze their accounts.
The whole A to Z, go after them. Not freeze only their accounts. The accounts forever. If they're dead, they can't use the account, obviously. If they know that they're not going to live long enough to enjoy the benefits of their illegal action, they definitely wouldn't want to perpetrate that action. So the death sentence is finality. And once we seize your asset and your related family and friends and all their assets are confiscated, people will stop. But if we know them, we say, the past partners and the banks are you kidding me? That is serious. I didn't want to believe that. But if that's the case, then the government, because I trust the president is really looking straight into his eyes and the kind of statements and comments he makes about the Galamsey. No two ways that we shouldn't be toying with that. And now that you mentioned that the higher players behind the scenes, and
that is no secret that we have the big boys or they are very big players in
there's
society
a segregation of the players
behind this.
Segregation of the players, the big boys, the small boys, and the medium boys, and then everybody is getting their fill and go home free. Oh, that's very...
Do you think that is the political will is the challenge here? Some have said that, see, we saw it under the previous administration. We also see it still being going on. Our bane in fighting Galamsey is the political will, and it's impacting on your members.
George, I wouldn't even touch that with a 10-foot pole. Political will? Where's the politics of this?
I'm saying that if the politicians who are managing the space at the local governance level, as high up to the president's level, want to deal with this thing within a month, it can be done.
Of course it should
and
be
that is
done.
the political will argument.
Yes, it's not a
You think
political
there is a
will.
lack of political will to fight this thing?
I wouldn't say it's the lack of political. It's the part of that we don't have the investigative tool to identify the culprits and bring them to book. It's not a political will.
BNI, Security Service.
Oh, please.
Please. All these people are in there.
Yes. If they are
And if
in
you don't
there,
have the security thing to fight this?
yes, if we don't have the security apparatus to identify the culprits, how do you prosecute them? So, but if we know them and we not prosecute, then that is a dangerous.
But that's when people see that the lack of the political will, because some of these guys who are in are party card holders of whichever political party that is in government.
Are the politicians better than us, the citizenry?
No, they are not.
So then why do we allow that? So if good people don't speak up, then the bad people take advantage. And so the political wills is the bad people are not taking advantage because the people, good people, are shy to speak out.
I know some of your members operating within the mining space. How bad is
Chambers of Mines. Chamber of Mines is part of it.
How bad is it happen? How bad is it affecting your operations and your bottom line? Because I know that you operate in the SGG environment.
Yes, yes. I've spoken with the CEO of the Chamber of Mines 3 times today. He's new in there. He knows their responsibility. He's talking to his partners, the mining institutions and the small-scale miners and all. We believe that there should be stringent punishment whatsoever to the perpetrators of Galamsey. No two ways about it. And to me, it's whether the politician is at the highest tower of Ghana or at the lowest below the Roman Catholic cathedral or whatever, they should be prosecuted and given the safest sentence and confiscation of their asset that they accrue from the Galamsey operation.
And I know that the road contractors and even service providers are also members of your federation as well. Government has announced that by the next month, or ending of this month, they will start paying these contractors that they are indebted to them. I know it has an impact on cost of credit as well. As that brings you some smiles, I see some smile on your face. Does it bring you some excitement that if we have access to credit, can be addressed here?
George, it's not the excitement. It's the announcement. It's only an announcement.
Yeah.
Seen is believed.
Do you doubt that government will not meet those obligations?
I wouldn't doubt. I've seen government.
The president has said that, the Minister of Roads has said that they're going to pay audited projects. They're going to pay.
Governments have made pronouncements and still fail to pay contractors going back lots of years. So it's not, this president does not sign a lot of these things. He made his intentions known, he passes on, maybe the authorization and the command. Does it fall through the cracks? Yes, they do fall through the cracks sometimes. And sometimes these payments are not made. You know, talking about contracts and all, why do we not use our local raw materials for our roofs and housing and all to reduce the cost of housing and make housing available to the citizenry? These are things that we can do. Clay, converted into brick. Do away with the cement. The housing cost is reduced almost about 50%. And we sit there and we know. And the Minister of Housing is there. Minister of Construction is there. So how come? So all these things are things that we can do. The private sector is willing, and that's the engagement with the hierarchy of government, is to bring this to their attention. We want our housing to be adequately produced so everybody can have a decent housing. One of the SDGs, everybody, and the government is willing to invest in the SDGs. So let's get
And as you try and wrap on this discussion whole and bring the program to a close, do you think that we should be taking more seriousness, if I can use that expression, when it comes to our environment? Because, you know, it's quite critical. I mean, we've talked about Galamsey, but the other things as well. Some are saying that look at the weather today and the weather, you know, and what is happening.
You don't want to talk about the weather.
The impact on even on productivity as well.
Yes.
Is this something that we are not giving much attention to?
The climate impact on us, for economic well-being, is very dangerous. Now, as I said, the charcoal and then changing with the cook stove and there must be adequate research, technical people, MESTI. We're working with MESTI. As I'm sitting here, my guys are working on a program as to how MESTI can influence private sector activity and partner with international organizations. Now, PEF is willing and working with CSIR, Institute of Industrial Research, to do the cook stove evaluation as to the merits that it casts the chase from the analysis. We can do a lot. We should do, but the policies should be there. And the avenues make sure that we have the resources to do what we need to do. Other than that, the Ghanaian private sector is going to suffer. We have, all these, as I said, break, and, we're not taking advantage.
And now we have about 5 months more to the end of the year. What are the sector, the Federation's expectation going forward for the next half of the year? We've seen the first half already. I got from you that it's early days yet. There's a new administration, but we should give them some time. I mean, going for the next half of the year, what are the major things that you want to see happen when it comes to the business environment?
I think there should be laid down policy framework that would move us forward in the next 3 years or 3.5 years. So, period of learning had come and gone. Period of policy formulation had come in. Now we're moving to the implementation stages. And that implementation stages should influence what the private sector can do. There must be a collective action, a partnership arrangement in implementation. It's not government does that and private sector does that.
Is the partnership not there?
Private sector should be the driver. Government makes the policy and private sector drives it. But the policy being made should make it possible that the tools of trade, tools of engagement are provided to the private sector to enable them to do what needs to be done.
And I appreciate your time, Suman. And now Sebunsu is the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation. And if I could give you your final thought.
My thought is, let's do joint implementation, joint policy formulation, and make sure that the benefit accrues to John Q. Ghana, the private sector, and the government. And when the foreigners come to play, they become our hosts, not our guardians. Thank you.
Well, I know the debate will still go on in your homes and your offices about what else can be done for the private sector so it plays its rightful role in the economy, the issues about taxes, the issues about cost of doing business, the issues about the environment and how it's impacting on their operations and what government has to do, and even the issues about Galamsey, the issues about policy rate, what Bank of Ghana has to do to give some real meaning to private firms out there. My name is George Yaffe, and indeed, have a great day. My guest, Nana Sebunsu, is Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation, sharing his thoughts on what needs to be done for the private sector. Have a great day.